Hi, my name is Jeff from Mental Health Resource. Welcome back to StraitJacket Pod.
My name's Rachel Honda, LCSW, and this is our guest, Keta Loren.
Hi, very nice to be with you guys today. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to be here and cover a few topics.
Yes, of course. So, Keta, can you tell us a little bit about your story and what's brought you here today?
So, yeah, I was asked to be on the podcast, of course. That's what brought me here today. So my name is Keta Loren. I am a musician, a content creator, and I kind of walked into content creation through being in the music industry. So back in like 2010, when social media was starting to pick up, musicians had to start doing social media. And so by chance, I happened to get really good at it. And then when I transitioned out of the music industry, I decided, well, I'm really good at this content creation thing. Maybe I'll be doing that. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years.
While we're on that topic, did you hear that TikTok is like gonna be banned in 3 days?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's actually gonna go through or not. They've been doing so much back and forth that it could go either way at this point.
They've been saying it so much that I didn't think it was. Yeah.
I thought it was like, I didn't know, but I heard that it was going through.
No, I mean, there's always a chance that it doesn't. So right now, Joe Biden's saying that he's not going to enforce whatever the rules are. It did pass. The bill did fail in Senate to extend it for 270 days. So we're kind of just flip-flopping back and forth. So Joe's saying one thing. He's saying he's going to pass it off to Trump. And then the Senate's like, no, we're not going to do an extension, but it's not fully banned yet. So there's still a little bit of time. And then even if it does get banned, we have a new president coming in office who supports TikTok. So we're not really sure what's going to happen with it, but it is kind of keeping us all on our toes. So, yeah. There's a ton of platforms, though. Which I think that's
There's
the
like
point.
a new one, right? Like
Red Note. It's not new, actually. It's it's probably
what is it?
It's probably the funniest thing we've ever done as a country.
I know, it's pretty weird, right? It's like, well, we don't want China to have this information, so we're going to use the Chinese
hilarious. It's the Boston Tea Party of this generation. So basically, it's a revolt because they are saying they're taking TikTok away because they don't want our Chinese spies to have our data. And so everybody's willingly giving their data over to this app called Red Note. It's called Little Red Book, which is like the communist notebook, basically.
Oh,
but we call it Red Note. And we can't read the terms of service. It's all in Mandarin. If you're looking up the app, like it's in Mandarin. So you can't see anything. But there's a ton of Americans over there like sharing content. And they've all been really welcoming, which is pretty cool. So it's just been hilarious because Americans, we are rebellious. Like, we don't want to be told what to do. You told us we were free. Sure. We're going to find a way around to stick it to you, and we are going to organize, and it's going to be hilarious. We are pretty funny. Americans,
is a good way to do it, honestly.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious, right? It's like a kid, like, rebelling against their parents. Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, about your content creation. So, you in your music industry, why did you leave the music industry?
I think it was just time. I had been pursuing it as a songwriter and an artist for like 10 years. And then I kind of transitioned out. Like, I was working on a final project, and I have bipolar disorder. So I actually had like a manic episode, and I gave away all my crap, and I like literally everything I owned, and I moved to Peru to write a book.
Peru.
So yeah, and like I didn't realize I was in one until like I was in Colombia, and I had like finished the book, and I was like something like just snapped, and I was like, oh, that was an episode. I want to go home now. So, but I did finish the book. The book is called Gutter Kid by Keta Loren. It's available everywhere. It's about my story, and how I grew up and a lot of the experiences that I went through that are pretty, there's some darkness in there, but it's definitely inspirational as well.
Can you tell us about some of those things in the book?
Yeah, so it covers my early history when I was about 18 years old. So we'll go back. So I grew up in the foster care system. So through that, I kept getting in trouble. And then I ended up going to something called California Youth Authority. A lot of them are closing down, but it's basically like prison if you are not old enough to go to prison. And I really didn't do a lot wrong. They just didn't have anywhere else to put me. And so I had some confinement time. And so they put me in the California Youth Authority. So eventually I aged out, and I went to Northern California. I had like 2 weeks in the Crystal Motel that they gave me. They gave me no resources whatsoever, no money.
Wow, so they just threw you in a hotel or a motel
for 2 weeks. Yeah.
Like as soon as you
and I
turned
had been
18?
institutionalized. Like I had no family to speak of. Like I had no money, no experience in the real world. I'm 18 years old, and just was like, they were like, figure it out. And I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, so, for all intents and purposes, like the story makes sense with like how it started, like how it all played out. Like statistically, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense that all these things would happen. Yeah. But so I didn't have really anywhere to go when I went back to my hometown, because they passed something called SB 81, and what that did was for nonviolent offenders that were in the juvenile justice system, that sent them back to their county of origin. But I was already an adult, and my county was like, we don't want her, like she's whatever, we gave her to you, the state. Yeah. So it was a way to get out of having resources for all of these individuals. So while normally they would have had to have provided me with transitional living expenses, clothing expenses, food expenses, whatever, like had to help me transition back into the real world, they didn't do that. So I was kind of just left out in the cold.
Because the government doesn't want to spend the money.
Right. And so I was a prime candidate for like human trafficking. So it's crazy because it's always somebody that you know. It's like somebody who you think you can trust at some level. And a friend had reached out to me during like one of the worst moments in my life. I have nowhere to go. I don't know what I'm doing. And she said, come to LA. My friend is in the music industry, and I told you that if I ever could help you follow your dreams, that I would help you. And so I'm like,
that sounds
hell
good.
Yeah, let's go. You know, God's looking out, you know, like I got an opportunity. Like I knew it was going to work. I was going to go to Job Corps because I didn't know what to do with myself, you know? So I think at the time I was selling meth. Yeah, I was. And I was out of meth and out of money because I kept getting robbed. When did the meth
start? Was it like when you were youth, or like was that recent?
No, it started when I was like 18. Like I partied a little bit because I got out when I was 14, or I went in when I was 14. I got out when I was 16 and a half. And then I got violated when I was, I think, 17. So I ended up going back in for another 9 months. So I did 2.5 years almost.
What brought you in when you were 14 initially?
There was a lot of running away, but they would get me for little things like fighting. I had some batteries. I had, the one major charge that I had was I was selling chocolate this is so stupid. I was selling chocolate, like the world's finest chocolate, for school. And I wanted to go to the fucking pizza party. And so I changed the check from $17 to $43 so that I could look like I was selling a whole box of chocolate. And then I got charged with a felony forgery for that.
What? Okay, that's crazy.
Man, at 14 years old?
I was
crazy.
11.
11?
I was 11 years old. Wow. Yeah, and it's completely insane.
That's tough because there was like nobody really to just
to
tell you that's...
That was actually when I went back to live with my mom briefly, and she's the one that pressed charges on me.
Oh,
but that's why I didn't live with her. You know, she was not fit. So I tend not to talk about her much, but she's a part of my story. Like, I don't want to hurt anybody, but at the same time, you know,
it's part of it.
It's a part of my story. It's my story. It's not anybody else's. So I have every right to my story, you know, and I tell everybody else that, like, if people wanted to be, you know, talked about better, they should behave better. And like, people make mistakes in life, and that doesn't mean they should be punished for them forever, but the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth, no matter which way you spin it.
We'll edit out your last name.
No, I mean, my last name isn't even their last name because it's it's a stage name. So
okay.
But yeah, so the friend told me to come to LA, and I did, and she had a pimp, and I had nowhere to go, and there was nothing that I could do. I had no one to call. There was nowhere to go. I was out on the streets of LA with no other choice. You know what I mean? And so it's actually insane, because this is the position that foster kids end up in. Right. I think it's something about 75% or more human trafficking victims have been in the foster care system. Wow. Or at least once have been in the foster care system. So, or a ward of the state, or whatever the case is. So the statistics, it's like, when you're in foster care, you are essentially living with people who are paid to keep you. Like, they're not all good homes. No. They don't necessarily like you. They don't necessarily want you there. And so it's kind of like breeding this understanding to stay places where you're being abused, to stay places where you're not supposed to be.
Is there much abuse going on in these homes?
It's more, there is, but it's harder to detect because it's emotional neglect, emotional abuse, withholding, like food. There's people who have like locks on their fridges and cupboards and stuff. You're only allotted a certain amount a day. You know, it's not always outright physical abuse because it's so much easier to report, but it's not a healthy environment. I would say 80% of the time. I did have a few foster parents that were like literally angels. There was a couple of them, you know what I mean? And I'm forever grateful to them because they showed me that there are good people in the world. But I had other ones that were just like, it was a check. It was a check, and I was extremely rebellious. So I was a hard teen to have. I was a hard kid to have in general because I was so damaged from the abuse that I suffered when I was younger that like I was a mess. I was an absolute mess when I was a kid. So I went from place to place to place to place to place. Yeah. So my book is essentially covering that portion of my life and escaping that experience and moving into a new part of my life. And I'm writing a second book about my addiction, which came kind of, well, they overlapped, but the worst part of my addiction came after that, for sure.
After you escaped LA? Or?
After I escaped that situation,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So after that, I think I was doing only meth, and then I quit. I quit for like 2 years, and then I ended up relapsing. But I just quit. Like, I didn't go to AA. I didn't go to rehab. I just was like, I need to not do this anymore. This is ruining my life. And I quit, and I went to school, and I was pursuing a career. And then I had another trauma happen, and I went right back. And so that seems to be like the Band-Aid for me, or the crutch for me, whenever there's like something highly traumatic, because like my soul can't deal with it or something. And so it decides that it's going to like numb it or cover up the pain. And, you know, the only way to get out of your mind is to get out of your fucking mind, you know, and drugs get you out of your mind, because your mind can be an extremely painful place to be. And if you don't have the right tools to walk through traumatic experiences, or even the monotony of everyday life, like how many people relapse because they're bored? You know what I mean? Like, how many people relapse? They don't know their
meaning or purpose.
Right, they don't have a purpose. They're like, what am I doing every day? Is this all that there is? And it's like, I call myself the queen of reframe, because you can look at anything in a completely different way and see it the exact opposite way. And it does take a lot of courage to continue to walk forward when what you're looking at doesn't seem like it's panning out the way that you expected in life. And I think we all get to those places in our life where we're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this? What am I doing here? You know? But the magic is if you keep going, you can stay there if you want to. That's always a choice. But if you keep going, the tide has to change. It has to change. It's just the way that the world is. What goes up must come down. So it's looking at life from a different perspective and believing that something different is possible, you know? So.
Yeah, I'm excited to read your book. That sounds really good.
Thank you.
And when's the next one supposed to come out?
I feel like I'm in a little bit of a sophomore slump with it. I have written about a third of it, but the first one was like such a powerful, for one, I was manic when I wrote it. So it's really good, actually. I wrote it in 3 weeks, and it took me 6 months to edit it. So the full process from start to finish with the publishing to the book cover, all those things, took about 9 months, which is an insane turnaround for a book.
Yeah.
But when I was writing it, I had broken both of my feet in Mexico. I had
How?
I convinced 20 was staying at this hostel. I was having the time of my life, guys. Listen, I was having a good time.
Yeah,
okay, I know how to party. I know how to live. You know, and so I convinced 12 people to go night swimming with me in Tulum, and so we all rode bikes down to the beach to go swimming. And I ran into the water and I'm screaming, I love my life. And there's a ditch that I thought was a puddle because I can't see. And I went doof, 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 doof. And I rolled it out and I had broken my right ankle and I had broken my left foot. And I had went to this doctor. And he was like, nah, it's fine. It'll be fine in 5 to 7 days. Here's some, he gave me a Suboxone shot or something because it was so fucked up. And I was like, I feel like he's wrong, but I want to believe him. I'm like, am I getting scammed at the doctor right now? I for sure was. I didn't know it was broken until I got back to the States, but I was so mad at Mexico that I bought a flight to Colombia. So I was laid up with I couldn't walk, right? I could, but with crutches. But, so for the next, I want to say almost month, I just furiously wrote night and day. And I had written this book. And then the editing part was the hardest part to do because you're going through everything that you wrote ferociously in a manic episode trying to piece everything together and make sure that the flow is right and make sure that everything is you can understand everything and it's going in and out of flashbacks. So because I have PTSD, I experience flashbacks from my childhood, and so the book is written in a format of you'll be in the present day and then something will happen and it'll take you into a flashback and then you'll wake up out of it.
That would be a really good movie too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's crazy because I didn't even, it wasn't a thought in my head that I was going to write it this way. It wanted to be written. So yeah. So the other one's about a quarter, I'd say a quarter, it's about 20,000 words. Standard book is 80 to 100K. So it's about a quarter of the way done and we're still working on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How many pages?
Almost 200.
You wrote 200 pages?
Yeah.
Is that quick?
Yeah. I've always heard people say they want to write a book, but I've
It's
never met
hard
someone
to
who's
do.
actually done it.
Yeah, it's like I said, that book wanted to be written. I do believe that creative the muses, that's a real thing. When you want to create something, there's inspiration or you can pull it out. You know, you can pull it out, but it's not going to be as good as when that inspiration hits and you're riding this wave of creation. So the inspiration for that one hasn't hit. I think it's because the first one was such a success and it was so good that I'm comparing the second one to the first one, and so I need to stop doing that. I know better than to do that. I know to just write, and then anything that I don't like, you can edit, right? You can edit it out. But I'm pretty hard on myself because I believe in quality, you know, and I wouldn't want to put anything out that was not great. But yeah.
So you've written a book, you've done music, you've done all these things. Do you feel like being diagnosed with bipolar disorder has helped you to do these things?
It's been such a double-edged sword. It's definitely ruined opportunities that I've had. But it's also given me massive strokes of creativity to the point where I don't know who I am not bipolar.
Right.
You know, I don't know who I am without this diagnosis. I know what I'm medicated. I know what I'm like unmedicated, which for most of my life I was just raw dog and bipolar. Like I was like, it was only very recently that like I found something that did actually help. And so we're still in a trial process. I think it's been like 5 months or something that I've been on medication, but I didn't need it. Like I would be completely stable. I would do diet, exercise, meditation. Like being bipolar is really hard. Like keeping yourself stable without medication is incredibly hard. But I had tried going on medication before, and it was like it would send me into a 6-month long depression, or it would make me manic to where I was like off the walls. Like I couldn't find what would work, and I would get so discouraged from trying all these different things with these people who are like just guessing. The doctors are just guessing and like throwing things at you, and I'm like, if anybody's going to experiment on me, it's going to be me. And so so I had lost my best friend very tragically in July of 22, and kind of that like hit my life in such a way that I didn't know grief could be that deep. I didn't know that pain was, I've suffered through like a horrendous like heroin addiction, crawled out of that hole, human trafficking, foster care. Like I've survived some things, and losing Stephanie is her name was like one of the worst things that I've ever experienced. Just because of the way that it happened. And in that experience, like I had to pull myself up off the ground so many times to where it was like a year had passed. And as you can see, like it still fucks me up. Like I'm traumatized by it. But a year had passed, and I was like, you're not getting better. You need to get some help. Like you need to try again. Even if it failed the first, the second, the fifth, the 92nd time, you need to try again. You need to talk to a doctor and see if maybe there's something that you can do, because I was in such a dark place. And like my personality, like who I am in life is just like so tenacious and like so vibrant. And that was like, it was like 75% of me was like just wandering in the ether, in the abyss somewhere. Like I didn't exist fully as myself.
Right.
And so like, sometimes it takes that much to break you open and make you realize how human you are. And it was that time that I found something that actually helped me and made me feel stable, which is completely insane. But like my friend Krista, she always said, like, there's gifts from grief, it doesn't come empty-handed. Yeah. And I was like, like I do not want to hear about the gifts of grief right now. Like I am so in the throes. But she was so right. And there were so many, like I could go on for days about it. One of the other things that happened with that situation was my dad, so he has been homeless, and like there was something that happened to where he lost his mind. So when I was 7, my house burnt down and killed 3 of my brothers and 1 of my sisters. Wow. And he was the one that left the candle burning. It was on Christmas night. The power had gotten shut off because he was using, and he never forgave himself. And so he was like living in like Michigan or Montana or something. And I hadn't spoken to him in a while because it was just hard. It's hard to deal. There's so much. Yeah. And like over the years, there's been so many things and so many attempts to help, and like so many, I didn't understand it either. I'm like, figure it out. Like, get up. Like, you have to get up. And then when I got rocked by Steph's death, I remember I was on my knees and I was like praying. I was like just praying for some of the pain to lift. And I just heard, imagine this times 4 and it's your fault. And I was just like, And it covered me with such compassion and grace for my father that I never knew or never thought I could have, because I just didn't understand why he couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
Why he couldn't get himself back on his feet. And in that moment, God was with me 100%. And said, imagine this by times 4. And I couldn't even have imagined it times 2, times 1.5. 1 inch more, I would have fallen off the edge. Like, that's how much pain I was in. And I had like this understanding at that point. I'm like, okay, I actually don't know how deep the depths of pain are. And maybe I can have, you know, a little bit more compassion and a little bit more grace, and maybe I can try this thing again and like try to help him. And so now he's actually out here. I got him into a place. And so, but it's like just funny how God works with these things that seem to be like earth and life shattering, but there's always, it doesn't come empty handed. Like
it's
Krista
still bringing
said.
a connection.
It's still bringing good, you know, it's because like wisdom is hard earned. Wisdom is hard earned. It does not come easily. And if I had my say or my choice, I would get no more wisdom. No. I don't want any more. I would say it's enough wisdoms. We're good. We don't need any more wisdoms. Thank you. You know, but you don't get to choose.
Yeah.
You don't get to choose. So.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot of wisdom, so.
I have. It's unfortunate. Because then you're responsible for, like, using it. And sometimes I don't want to, you know? Sometimes I want to be a piece of shit. Like, I do. Like, sometimes...
It's less pressure.
It's so much less pressure. It's so much easier. It's like, oh, I got to take the high road. Ugh, I got to be the bigger person. Ugh, I got to make the right decision now, you know? And sometimes, like, there's still that part of you that's living inside of you that's like, no, I want to, like, punch somebody in the throat right now, you know? It's like, no, you can't. Like, you're not allowed to do that. Like, you know better. Once you know better, you have to do better because your consequences are so much stronger.
It's true.
Like, I truly, honestly believe that life protects you if you don't know any better. But once you do, man, once you know better and you do it anyways, you're getting popped. Like, it just is the way that it is. Once you know a lesson, once you know something is wrong or the wrong way to go about things and you defy it, then you get the full weight of that consequence.
And that guilt and shame lives with you.
Yeah, it does. And those will eat you up.
Yep.
Those will eat you up. And that's what takes us down. Shame is like the most insidious emotion. I don't carry a lot of shame. I don't feel shameful about things that happen to me. You know?
Well, because they weren't your fault.
Right. But when I was younger, I did feel shame. And because I didn't have the concept that the things that happened to me weren't my fault, because they were made to be my fault. Like, it was because there was something fundamentally wrong with me, which in fact wasn't true. There was fundamentally something wrong with other people, and as a result, I was traumatized, which made something wrong with me. You know, but if you're not actively seeking, you know, help, whether that's through counseling, EDMR, recovery, PTSD treatment, whatever it is, they have like TMS now. Like, they have so many more options with mental health and trauma than they ever have before. There's a new one called ART. ART therapy. But if you're not actively working and walking in that direction, then you're going to be consumed by that grief, that guilt, that shame, whatever it is. So you have to take the first step.
What has helped you get out of those, like, bottom moments?
A support system. And you know what? It wasn't even getting out of them. Getting out of them, I think, happened in its own time. It was really just time. There were certain things that, there are certain things that can happen, and, like, there are tools to get you out of it. Right. And then sometimes life's going to hit you so hard that nothing's going to help. And it's just a waiting game, and it's just, you know, holding on. Sometimes all you can do is just hold on. And but the people who loved me through it, the people who sat in the dirt with me, the people who didn't, you know, allow me to give up, you know, the ones that reminded me, oh, I'm gonna cry, the ones that reminded me of who I was because I had forgotten, you know. So but a lot of it was like not getting out. It was staying in those places for a while and just hanging on for dear life, you know. So, but there were those moments, like, which we'll call like God shots, you know, at different points in my life where there was this miraculous thing that happened, that there was like no other way that it could have happened. And it made me see that there was a creator that was working for my best and highest good, and that I was being given an opportunity, and I didn't want to disrespect the opportunity. And so I definitely, I was aware of that as well. So, yeah.
Are you in recovery now? Like, would you say you're AA?
I am. I would say I'm AA. I mean, I do go to meetings, and I have a sponsor who has a sponsor, and I practice the principles in all of my affairs. I think, you know, I have had my bouts of like frustrations with AA, like the personalities and stuff. I've seen things happen that, and that's why they say principles over personality, right? Because when I relapsed, I had 3 years and I relapsed, and people treated me like garbage. Yeah. They did not, like, everybody was like, I was a pariah.
You're like an outcast at that point.
Yeah. And it's like, no, that's when you need to take people in.
Right.
That's when you need to help the most. And like, that's when I saw who was really down for me, who was in my corner when I wasn't doing the best, because none of us are immune. None of us are immune from relapse. None of us are immune from something that just the wrong life hitting the wrong way one time, and you're out there deep in the trenches of addiction, you know, and you're sitting there like, how did I get here? What even happened? You know, life will take you by surprise sometimes. So I do work a program of recovery, and I know that my best self is a sober self. I know that my best self is a sober self. I am very aware, though, that like having bipolar makes it hard for me to get long-term sobriety. So that's something that I've had to accept and walk through, taking each good day and making sure that I make the best of it, because I don't know when life's going to flip. So, I mean, for some people, especially if they've never dealt with relapse before, they're like, I don't get it. Just stay. Because I was that person who proudly in a meeting was like, relapse isn't part of my story. You know, like that was me. And then it was a part of my story. And I was like, oh, I sound like a dick. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes I hear people say that and I'm like, good for you. Because you might not have, maybe that's why God kept you there, because maybe you couldn't handle it. Maybe you wouldn't have made it back. You know what I mean? And so I just have to keep in mind that I have one day in front of me. I have one day in front of me. I have one day of recovery. Every single day that I wake up, I have a choice. I get to choose that day. And if I make the choice to be sober that day, it's usually a really good day. So.
And what do you know you have to do to stay like sober and also like good mental health?
I think for me, like, I'm pretty militant about like a morning routine. I wake up, I meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. I write in my journal. Sometimes I do some breath work, because this is all what I put in practice before I like found medication that actually helped me. And they helped me like so tremendously, because it's focusing like the first part of your day. It's called priming, like Tony Robbins like coined the phrase, because they had done studies that when you first wake up, you're the most impressionable. So if you put positivity in your ear the moment that you wake up, you're more likely to have a positive day. They did this study where they walked up to people on the street early in the morning and they were like, hey, can you hold this? And they handed a stranger a cup of coffee. And then later they did the study, and the people who were handed a warm cup of coffee had good feelings towards the person that handed it to them, and the person who took the cold cup of coffee had like negative feelings. Like, we're so unaware of how we are wired and like what affects us on a day-to-day basis. So whatever you can control and like streamline into a practice, like it gives you a little bit more defense against the day.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I do. I also keep really, really positive people around me. I keep people who actually like me and love me.
Good.
And you know what I mean? Yeah. My biggest accomplishment in life is the people that I have in my life. Like, the people who love me are so rad. Like, they're the best, like, hands down, the best human beings that you will ever come across in your life. And that's how I know, that's how I gauge my quality of character, is because the people who love me are that rad. You know what I mean? So
that's a good way to look at it, because some people are like, okay, just a bunch of acquaintances, and they're like, look, I have so many friends, but it's like, who's going to be there at the end of the day?
Right. And, you know, who's going to be there when you have nothing to give?
Yeah. Who's
going to be there when you need to take? Who's going to be there when, you know, the bottom's fallen out of everything, because they actually love you as a person and not for like what you can do for them or what they get from it. Of course, all relationships are like mutually beneficial, or they should be, but there's going to come points in your life where you're going to see who's really the real deal and who's not, you know? So
it's very true.
I guess one of the things that you said, or one of the parts of your story that interests me, is the foster care stuff. And then what is it called that you went to? Like, you said it's kind of like a
California Youth Authority.
Yeah, California Youth Authority.
Yeah.
How was that?
I mean, the foster care system is the foster care system. It's, for one, you've been discarded. Like, so you have severe abandonment trauma going on, which you won't even recognize until you're in your 20s, and you're like, why do I keep acting this way, you know? So the foster care system, like I said, was, there would be a bad home, there would be a good home, but because I had like confinement time, I would go to juvenile hall and wait for the next foster home. So it was like the least ideal situation for a kid growing up. And then eventually they kind of just ran out of places to put me. And so they put me in the California Youth Authority, which it was in Ventura, and it was called VYCF. And I think they're shutting all of them down, because they're just kind of not seen as, you know, humane. Like, they should have, I'm pretty sure they were for profit too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were doing like cash for kids and stuff. I'm pretty sure my county was involved.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like
so
the county
how
would
they
get paid.
treat you there? Like, what would they?
You're just just like everywhere else. You're just an inmate. So I mean, they had like 4 classes a day, and you could, when I got out,
was there any therapy offered? Anything
there
like
was, but it was so low quality. Like, everything was such low quality. Like, it's state driven. Like, there wasn't
just
really
to check
therapy.
A box,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be now, because they've done a lot of work around these, you know, programs and stuff. Especially with like foster kids aging out. Like, they have systems in place, they have grants in place, they have traditional housing in place. They didn't have these things. They were just starting, but I didn't get to access any of those things when I got out. So they've made a lot of progress, but when I was going through it, we were like the test dummies, you know? So
What about medication management?
With regarding to me now?
No, like before.
They did. They like to keep everybody on medication. And that was where some of my trauma with medication came from. Because when I was a kid, I was so young, and I should not have been on all of those medications. Like, where I was on lithium, they were having to draw my blood. Like, I was having to go to the place to get my blood drawn all the time. And
what did you think of it? Like, you were just like, well, they're telling me to take it, so I'll take it? Or was it like, I don't know how to feel about how I feel with this? Or what did it kind of just...
It was just something like, because I remember them asking me, is it helping? And I'm like, obviously not, because like y'all keep changing it.
Yeah.
So I'm like, people are saying I'm still a problem. So like, obviously not. And I was always made to feel like I was a problem. So it didn't seem to help then, you know what I mean? Maybe it did, and I didn't notice it. But when you're like 10, 11, 12 years old, you don't freaking know.
Yeah.
You don't know if something's helping you or not. You don't have the consciousness or the awareness. Like, your frontal lobe isn't even developed yet, you know? Like, you're just like, I guess, I don't know. Why are you asking me? I'm the kid. Like, you know, you should know.
You probably didn't even understand the diagnosis at the
No,
time,
and I
so.
was diagnosed, well, bipolar 2. So, and then when I turned 27, I think, no, 28, it transitioned into bipolar 1. So I didn't have any type of episodes until I was about 28. So I just had like the swinging back and forth, like rapid cycling bipolar, and then, which is gnarly in itself.
Yeah.
It's super gnarly. And then I started having like long episodes. So it'd be episodes of depression, episodes of mania, and then episodes of remission. So I could keep myself in remission for a good like year or two sometimes, just through diet, exercise, meditation, and just really positive, you know, reinforcement. But if something, that was the thing that I couldn't control, was like if something external happened that was traumatic in any way, I'd be off to the races and, you know, moving to Guam. And my friend's like, what's in Guam? I was like, we're going to find out. I don't
We'll
know.
see.
We'll see. When I get there, I'll send you a postcard, you know? So.
And what age was it initially that you went into the foster care system? Because I know you said that, like, at first you were at home, but then there was a tragedy.
Yeah, I was back and forth between my mom and my dad up until I was, like, 9.5. So the tragedy happened when I was 7. And then, like, he kind of pulled through. Like, he found Christ and was like writing Christian music. My dad's an epic musician as well, and like there were some like really good times that happened after that, and then it all just, the bottom fell out of everything. So
It's like something happened.
It was just, he couldn't live with it. Yeah, he was trying to find peace and find some type of hope and willingness to move forward, and like I just think it was too heavy for him to carry. And he struggled with substance abuse disorder, and he suffers from other mental health issues as well. Like, they're definitely genetic. Definitely have some genetic markers there. So the bottom kind of fell out of it, and then I went into the foster care when I was 9.5 the first time. And then
were you just kind of like accepting of it, or I guess like what
was
was
happy.
it like? Really?
Yeah.
What was it like when you first got there?
When I first got there, it was like a vacation.
Really?
Yeah, because I was so glad to be somewhere else. Yeah. And then it just became like, that was a temporary home that was like called respite care that they put me in, and then they put me in a more permanent home, and there was like 10 girls, and like it was crazy, like 10 young girls that all have issues, like they're all growing up in the foster care system, they've been abused. Like, you put that many people in a place together with that many problems, like it's gonna be a problem. And so that one was really rough. And then I went to one where I was like the only kid, and like I did really great there, and then they put me back with my parents. My mom was like doing well. Well, she was doing well too, but it wasn't a good place for me. So I ended up going back into foster care when I was 13, and then they tried a couple group homes, and then when I was 14, they put me in California Youth Authority.
Wow. I feel like you did not need to go there. But.
No, and that's the thing, is like when I look back at my story sometimes, I'm like, what the heck? Like, what do you...
Someone should have been there to like fight for
you know, like yeah. And I think that's the sad thing, because what happens when the people who are supposed to advocate for you are the enemy, you know, or are the people that are harming you, or are just unfit or unqualified, or there's so many different instances where, you know, there needs to be advocates for foster kids. There needs to be advocates for kids going through the system, and there needs to be advocates for in these situations where kids don't have parents, because they have either a lawyer or a CPS worker. I mean, I'm sure that they do now. Like, I haven't been in the foster care system for a long time, but at that time they did not have any of those things.
What do you think, like, a big change, or from your eyes, since you went through it, what do you think is a big thing that could change?
It's so hard because it's such a system. You know, and when they have good homes, they have good results. Like, so a lot of kids get adopted from foster homes into, you know, it's really case by case. Like, some kids go to one foster home and they get adopted and they stay there for the rest of their life. And then some kids end up in 20 plus homes. I think the older kids have a harder time finding a place to go because they've endured so much trauma already that they're messed up. They're hard kids to deal with. They have attitude problems and they run away, and like maybe they're trying drugs for the first time. Like, they're not easy kids to manage at all. So it takes a lot of love and a lot of patience. And some of it is just like there's nothing you can do differently. And then some of it is like maybe there's, you know, programs that can be enacted to where these kids have more support, like assigning them like an advocate or something, or making sure that they're the only kid in the home, which is hard to do when you have a foster care problem. But I don't know, you know, I wish I had more answers. I wish I had all the solutions, but there are people that are trying to solve these problems. It just takes forever because they're really hard to solve.
Yeah. And it is a system, like you said.
It's a system.
So. But I think, like, knowing what resources they have is important.
I think starting before foster care happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's a huge wave in people getting recovery. There's also a huge wave in people not having children because they can't afford them. So I think just naturally, I think people are starting. This is the first generation that's taken like healing really seriously. True. And it's the first generation that's been like not doing exactly what the last generation did because it didn't work. So they're raising their children differently. They're not having kids. And they are like attending therapy and like they're taking their mental health seriously. Yeah. They're going to therapy. They're on medication. They're, you know, doing things differently than everybody before us was just like, shh, don't talk about it.
Yeah, don't talk about
Hold
it.
it
Don't
in.
talk about it. Like until it all blew up and it was all over the place and the cat was out of the bag and there was nothing to do. So I think the biggest thing was like getting people in recovery. To be honest, like
Awareness.
Because most kids that are in foster care are in foster care because of addiction. That's like the number one cause. Okay. So with more awareness on recovery, more programs, the ability to get people the help that they need, that's gonna reunify. You know, and they have laws and stuff. Like if you attempt to get clean and you want to reunify, then, you know, you can, unless your kids get adopted out. Like you have a certain amount of time in order to show the court that you're doing what you need to do. And if you do, then they won't put your kids up for adoption, especially they're more likely to go up for adoption if they're really young. So, if they don't do that, then, and they're still, which a lot of people are just so deep in their addiction, they're not going to a court date. No. They don't even know what a court date is. They're in a completely different universe on a different
They have so many
planet.
other problems.
Yeah, there's just like, it doesn't even like, when you're lost in addiction, like you don't know what fucking day it is. Like you don't know what day it is. Time is a complete like lapse. Like you don't have any concept of time whatsoever. The only thing you have a concept of is using.
Getting the drugs is hard enough.
Getting the drugs and the money for the drugs, you know,
enough.
is hard enough to where like you could even have the best of intentions and then be like, oh my God, that was Tuesday, you know, and like now your kids are being adopted, you know. So yeah, it's a strange world we live in, honestly. But I think, if I were to say anything, it would be exactly what, you know, you two are doing. And it's just raising that awareness, getting people through the door. I mean, a lot of people don't stay recovered but you'll get the ones that do, and their kids will thank you for it. It might take a while to repair some of that, but I've seen some really beautiful reunifications where, you know, there's other cases where that doesn't happen, and it takes the kid a lot longer to recover.
It's true.
Yeah.
I guess my other question from the part of your story, what, if any, advice, because, you know, you successfully got out of being human trafficked, which is like a pretty big feat in of itself, you know. I mean, you've done a lot of miraculous things in your story, but how did you do that?
I'd started dancing, actually, which was like just the next step. I was like, I got to get out of this, because it was just not anything that I would have ever done on my own, you know. And when it's crazy because people who judge it, that if it was what they had to do to survive, if they were put in that position and they're in those circumstances, like you have no idea.
There's not many other options when you're like there.
Yeah. So like you think what you would do in a situation you've never been in, but you don't know what you would do in a situation you've never been in until you're in it. And when the circumstances hit, like, but what happened is I got, like, it was a complete God shot. Like, I got street casted for a Yahoo commercial. So I was just walking down the street going to Popeyes, and like I forgot to put change in the meter. It's on Hollywood Boulevard. So I went back to go put change in the meter, and this guy stopped me, and he was like, we're street casting for like this commercial. Like, if you want to come down, you look perfect for the role. You can come down, have dinner. We'll give you $200 if you make it into the commercial. Like, you'll make a ton of money, and if you don't, then you know you made $200 and you got to have a nice brisket, you know. And so I was like, heck yeah. So I go, and like, sure enough, they casted me. It was a global Yahoo commercial, and I made like $100K, and that was the first time I had seen like that mailbox money was coming through, and I was like, I'm done. Like I was still with the man that, because I had like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm done. We're done. And he's like, well, this money's going to run out. And I was like, yeah, well, I'll figure something out. And I bought a stripper pole, and I was like, I'll teach myself how to dance. I bought a DVD and a stripper pole. Wow. And
it's hard.
It is hard. Yeah, but I was, you know, I think 20. I was 20.
That's definitely God.
Yeah.
I mean, you randomly got picked on the street for a Yahoo commercial.
And it was a global Yahoo commercial, so we were getting money from it being everywhere. It was when Google was like taking over, and like Yahoo was trying to save their butt. And so they wanted real people. It was like their It's You campaign, and they wanted real people in the commercial. And so there's me. And then they had me like record a bunch of stuff at the end that was like, Yahoo, y'all, or like singing Yahoo, or like doing, because I have like a bunch of different voices that I can do. So like my laugh is even at the end of the commercial. But it's like the way God has, like, if you want to talk about like testimony, it's insane. Like the things that have happened in my life that have led me to this point are like once in a million, like never happens to anybody twice. Like most people will never have the amount of like complete divine intersections that my life has had. And I truly believe it's because I was courageous enough to walk forward, you know, even when it looked like I had lost. Yeah. Even when it hurt so much to do so, I continued to trudge forward, whether it was a crawl, whether it was, you know, a baby step, whether it was a leap or a run or a jump, whatever I could manage at that time. But I continued to walk forward with courage, scared, so terrified of what was going to happen next, you know.
So is there any advice that you would have to people stuck in that situation? Because I'm sure that, you know, it's like 1 in a million that they get that lucky.
Yeah. It's kind of an emotional place to come from, because it's like I wish somebody would have had something to say to me, but I don't think I would have listened. You know, there's such a mental manipulation hold on these girls. They think that they're being loved, and they're not. They're being used, and it's being contorted and distorted as love. But that's the only love they've ever known, was abuse. Everybody who said that they loved them beat them, treated them like crap, used them. So that's the only representation that they have. I would say that is not love. It is not love. The money doesn't love you back. And there is so much help available now. There are safe houses. There are people who walk the streets in Fig. Like, I've been involved with those programs too, where they go out and they give bracelets to the girls. I never walk the streets or anything, but there are still girls out there that are doing that, even in this day and age, you know, on Figueroa and downtown and stuff. But yeah, I wish that I thought somebody would listen at that point, you know. But like I said, like, I don't even think somebody who hasn't been through it can grasp like how deep the manipulation goes. Like, that's that person's lifeline. That's their income.
That's their
like,
whole
they'll
life.
they'll do anything, you know what I mean? So if there's a pimp involved, or if there's management involved, like, some of them are extremely violent. Some of them, they're all at some rate abusive. So how do you walk away from all you've ever known, not knowing what's next? And maybe you're addicted as well.
What you're comfortable with.
Right.
I don't think anybody's comfortable there, but I think that it's a lifestyle that it is your entire life. And so to walk away means giving up everything. It means giving up everything you've ever known. And that's a really scary place to be. Like I said, walking forward with courage, like that the next thing's going to pan out, that the next move is going to appear, you know, that the net is going to appear. I understand why people don't do it, because it's terrifying, and it's like, you know, it's painful and it's scary and it hurts, and like, you don't want to be put in those situations. We always want like some stability or some comfort to like guide us through, but that's not the case with these situations that are life or death, you know. So,
and I guess let's go into your recovery.
okay.
I guess, what has been some of the most beneficial things for you in your recovery?
Yeah, I would say the support. I would definitely say the support. The people, and I'll always say that.
Yeah.
When I was first getting sober, back in 2015, people just showed up. I didn't know these people. They had absolutely no reason to help me, and they just did because somebody helped them, which was completely insane to me. Like,
did you just walk into the rooms, or did somebody help you get there?
So, I had called like every treatment center. I had tried to quit on my own for like a year, and like I'd be kicked for like 4 days and then just right back on my dealer's doorstep because I couldn't make it past that 5th day. And it would happen over and over and over again. And I remember the realization. I was like, I'm telling you, that year mark for me for some reason, like it was with the depression, like, okay, you need to get help. This isn't working. The same thing happened with my addiction. It was about a year where I was trying to I'm like, I can do this. I did it before on my own. I quit
For 2
before.
years, right?
Yeah. But it was meth. It wasn't heroin. I didn't have like that fit. Like, there were days where I had to like pull myself up off the couch or the bed, and my limbs felt like cinder blocks, you know, and I had to like somehow push through, but it wasn't like kicking heroin, not at all. And so with that one, I remember I was like up in the middle of the night, and I was watching one of those sermons on TV because I was like so desperate. I was so desperate. And the pastor was like, there's somebody, I've never believed these things. Like, I never even thought like these things were real. Like, I'm like, whatever. But I needed to feel something. I needed to feel some hope. Because I had called like every detox in LA. I was living in LA at the time, and they were like hanging up on me because I didn't have insurance. And so I just needed to desperately believe that there was someone looking out for me. And the guy like pans to his face and he's like, there's somebody wearing a black shirt right now. And I'm like looking, I'm like
Like, okay.
and he's like, you need to write a check for $46 and send it to this address right now, and write in the corner a seed of what you're going to what you need, what your prayer is. And I was like, on drugs too, so I was like, oh, he's talking to me. But it was like that spiritual intervention, that divine intervention. He was talking to me. And so I walked to 7-Eleven and I bought I bought a money order for $46. And I remember my partner at the time like, that stuff's not real. What are you doing? I'm like, you don't argue with me about this right now. This is what I'm doing. This is going to help me. I know it is. He's like, you're crazy. I'm like, yes, I am. But I don't care. I'm doing this. It's my money. I can do what I want to do with it. And so I got a stamp in an envelope and a $46 money order. And I wrote in the corner a seed of sobriety. And I licked it and I sent it off in the big blue mailboxes out on the street. And my dad had just been scholarshiped into a program, and he was like, I think they'll give you a scholarship at this it was like the next day. He's like, I think they'll give you a scholarship. And I was like, okay. And so I called him and they're like, yeah, we'll come get you right now. And I'm like, well, not right now. Like,
hold on a second.
Tomorrow. Let me, I got really big business. I got important things to do. You know how every time somebody like decides to get clean, they're like, I have all these important plans that I have to get for. It's like, dude, just
come
pack
on.
your 3 shirts and let's go, you know? But, yeah. It was literally the next day, and I was just like, okay, God's with me on this one, you know? And they came to pick me up, and I was not ready yet. And I was like, I'll be there tonight. And he looked at me, and he just said, okay, I hope to see you. And, like, he did not believe me that I was going to show up. And I did. I did show up loaded. High as shit.
Of course.
But you showed up.
But I showed up. At like 11 at night, and they still took me in. And so yeah, that was the first time that I ended up getting sober. And like, if you know how like miraculous that is, like at every turn there was a new miracle. Like I had totaled my car right before this. I had like put it in the shop. Like I remember God being like, just be still. Because I was like trying to get things rushed, and like I was just always trying to make something happen for myself, just being in my own will. And I didn't understand what it meant to like walk in God's will, because I, as a survivor, had always had to make things happen myself, because if I didn't make them happen, I wasn't going to live. I wasn't going to survive. Like it was life or death at every turn, at every single turn. And so I had this tenacity, which was like such a good, quality to have, but when focused in the right direction. When focused in the wrong direction, it's incredibly destructive, you know? And so I had to learn how to take my hands off of things and like let God work some things out, you know? And at every turn there was an angel that showed up in human form that had exactly what I needed. I remember I told God I was going to quit dancing if he helped me, and then I needed to like pay for like my insurance to cover my my IOP, so they would pay my rent. And I called them to make the payment for the insurance, because like the Sober Living the Detox had bought me insurance as an employee. Like they were doing insurance fraud, so, or whatever they were doing at that time. And so they had left their card on file. And my insurance was paid up until the end of my stay there. So, like, I didn't even have to pay it.
Wow.
Yeah, like, there were so many things that happened to me in early recovery that, like, kept me on the right track. And, like, I could go on for days and days and days about all these things that happened. But they're things that, when you experience them for yourself, like, it's undeniable that there's a force that is working for you. And I choose to call that Jesus Christ, you know, but everybody has their own their own God. Everybody's free to have their own God. And, but that God does love you, and that God wants to make sure that you're taken care of. And if you just let go a little bit, if you just trust, let go and walk in the general direction of where you're supposed to go, you'll see all of these things happen in that intersection. And it's just like the coolest thing, because it's like a pick your own ending book. You know what I mean? Like, it's like this movie with all these twists and turns, and like, what's it called with where the ending is like,
Oh yeah, I don't know.
the surprise ending ones, you know, like it ends up being like
Plot
a complete
twist?
plot twist.
Yes. Okay.
All the plot twists. Good
I
job.
thought
Good job.
I thought you were thinking of some like deeper word.
No.
Yes, plot twist.
My brain escaped me. Yeah, all the plot twists that happen, like, it's such a cool ride, but some of it sucks. But it's such a cool ride.
But it's beautiful at the end.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, even in the trenches, you know, even in the throes. There's so much beauty in it, because like when I was going through, you know, that grief, I'd never experienced grief like that before. Like, and I've experienced a lot, and I'll say that with my chest. The way that I was loved so gently, and nobody tried to rush my process, which like, I feel like I thought like, dang, like this should be done by now, you know, like I should be over this by now. And I just wasn't. I'm still not, you know, and there is a little bit of healing that comes each day. And like, I have to take what I can get, because I'm not on my own timeline. I'm on grief's timeline, and it gets to make the rules. Apparently I don't like that part. But I don't get a say in like how long it takes to heal. But the people that loved me through it and walked with me, held my hand through all of it, you know, there was so much beauty in that. And there's also beauty in everything that was learned, and like really knowing how much you loved by losing it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Such a devastating process, but you got to love that much. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine being able to be loved and love someone so much that losing them destroys your life. Like, but you were loved that much. Like, that's the trade-off. Like, there's this saying, and it's, I think it's it hurts as much as it was worth. You know, it hurts as much as it was worth. And in order to have such a great pain, like, you would have had to have such a great love.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful for the love.
I think that sounds like a good ending place. We really appreciate you coming on, Keta. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Thank you.